Hey, what's up, Vox and Hops heads? I'm Matt, the vocalist for Cryptopsy, and you're listening to my podcast, Vox and Hops, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians to talk about their lives, music, and craft beer. I hope that you have had a great week. I have had a great week. I have been super busy, but I love being busy. I love doing things. I love hanging out with my metal friends and talking to them and then sharing those conversations with all of you. And that is sincerely what I've been doing all week, and I love it. Last night was amazing. The Vox and Hops Thirsty Thursday virtual hang was amazing. Thank you to all of you Vox and Hops heads and all of the Vox and Hops alumni and my friends that showed up last night. Super fun. I sincerely look forward to these every week, and it's always a pleasure. So massive cheers to everyone that came out, and I can't wait to do it again next Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The link for next week's Thirsty Thursday virtual hang is in the description of this podcast. Copy it. Send it to your friends, invite some people, let's hang out, let's make this amazing. On today's episode, I am with the vocalist and guitarist of Vader, who have just released their new album today called Solitude and Madness. You cannot have a more fitting name for the times that we are in. It is an absolute banger of an album, like all Vader albums. This record is brought to you by Nuclear Blast. It is absolutely amazing. So here it is, Vox and Hops, episode number 136, with Peter Wiwczarek of Vader.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Today I'm with Peter Wiwczarek from Vader. Did I get that right? Did I get your pronunciation of your last name right there?
Better than everybody else. You know, seriously, I always had a problem with pronunciation, even in Poland, in the school. You know, my name was always like mixed with some like different, like they called me like with some different names. But how it is, that's actually why I'm not using it. Like I use just my Peter as a actually real name and nickname.
Super stoked to be with you. You probably don't remember this, but I absolutely do. My first Cryptopsy tour ever was in 2008, and we played a show together in Prague.
Of course I do remember that one.
Really? And we went out to dinner together beforehand with Flo and you and me.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And I was so nervous because Flo holds you in such high esteem that he was just so excited leading up to this, that he built you up as this big rock star in my mind, but you were just such a sweetheart and so nice. So I want to thank you for that.
I remember that. You were just like so calm, so everybody was afraid that was going on, so maybe so you're going to have a heart attack on stage or something. But you had not.
Also that night, I learned a very, very valuable lesson. Never to try to keep up with the Polish crew when drinking vodka.
Oh, yeah, that's hard. Yeah, that's hard. Really. That's hard indeed. If you survive that, you survive everything.
That is correct. How are you doing amidst all of this craziness that's going on regarding COVID-19? How are you holding up?
I'm holding up pretty good, actually. The situation is pretty good to me because this is for the 15 years, actually, I live pretty much separated. I live in a house, old house in the woods, and, this situation actually did not change my life so much. But of course, I understand the global situation, and this is really serious things. And I know I used to study biology, so I know how the virus attacks. So the only way to erase this, problem from the earth, from our life, is to stay separated and to avoid of spreading that, because the virus will die naturally if you get not next victim. So what are we doing? What do we try to do now to stay separated, to stay in touch online only, I mean, this is so great tool at the moment in this very situation that we can stay separated in the flesh, but we can stay connected each together using internet and social media. So what an irony,
It's true.
And, but actually, again, if we stay separated, as soon we can get back on trail on a real life. And that's the only way. Trust me. That's the only way.
It's sort of funny, as you mentioned, that we're at a time where technology can still keep us connected. Last night, Cryptopsy were in the process of writing the new record, and we were writing the new record on Zoom in my guitarist's studio. We could see his screen. We can hear everything that he's playing as if we're there. It's almost a relief that we get to work this way, and we're sort of lucky.
How crazy times, right?
Absolutely. Let's go back to the past, though. When you were growing up in your house as a child, what music was playing when you were not in control of listening to what?
Actually, not my parents. I was raised with my grandparents, actually. So you can imagine, like, my grandpa, he was a part of an orchestra. So the classical music and Johann Strauss, Beethoven, or some military melody as well, some marches, because my grandpa was a professional military. He was serving in the military for years, and so actually my grandpa was infected with the music. It was him. That made me starting playing violin, and I was playing violin for around 7 years in a ground music school in Olsztyn, in the city I was born in. And unfortunately, in the early 80s, he died, and my grandma, she was trying, to continue the work. I tried to continue my education as a violinist, but that was that time when I started to turn 14, and I, my hormones started to boil, and I tried to escape from that. And of course, I love the classical music, but I just discovered something new. At first, that was totally different music. The only music you could hear in the Polish TV was those like Boney M or like ABBA, or these kind of typical pop music, available in Poland those years. But soon after, I discovered Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, That was the end of my ground school education. I was around 14 years old, and I had friends, and the one of those, Adam, he had the gramophone and those vinyls, of Black Sabbath, and that was exactly where I heard Black Sabbath and the Purple for the first time, and that was just like a storm in my mind, in my brain, and actually that was exactly when everything started. Soon after, I just give up with violin. I asked my grandma just to help me to have a bass guitar, because that was exactly after this state of war, which was just proclaimed in Poland, and the first shows after that, the first metal band from Olsztyn called Art Rock. And I was in the front of the band, that was the first time I saw the band like that playing live. And they were pretty much into metal. It was kind of like a metal rock band. And after that, I was sure that I have to be a bass player. I have to play something, and listen and play. And a year after that, I met Zbiggy, and I started to, in the meantime, I started to discover the bands like Motorhead, Saxon, and Judas Priest. And a couple of years after, we started the band Vader, and we wanted to play this kind of music, which is supposed to be extreme for us. And that was just very early 80s when that happened, and everything started to me like that. So I started to be a bass player. Then I turned into 6-string guitar because the guy said I played too much on the bass. The guitar. So I did. And so soon after that, I became guitarist in the Vader. I started to compose the first songs. So we are not just jamming covers. We also started to play our own songs. And that everything started, just like that. Probably the 100 other bands in the world, The only difference was we started in Poland and we get nothing. We have just passion. We have just love for music. And probably that was enough, all in all, just to continue the work. Just we need really, really many years until we get professional equipment, we get just professional support, and we started to be a real metal band. What was before was just bootleg, handmade, equipment things. But as I said before, enough just for start, enough for keep the passion burning.
But that also gave you the drive, because you guys had to be so hungry, because not many shows came through Poland back then.
Oh yeah.
You couldn't get the equipment that you needed, so you had to be hungry to keep going, which gave you the determination to keep going all these years too.
Each live, acting, each show, each one was a big deal, and we're like traveling to the other part of Poland just to enjoy that, So of course, like I remember, like when Iron Maiden with this huge show like appeared in Poland for the first time, and that was the Power Slave tour. So, and that was in, if I remember, 83 or 84 or something. So we already started Vader before, so we come to the show as a band, together. And actually that show changed everything, because like nobody ever expected metal music as that, as, like this. So we had already started before, but after this, probably 100 more bands started to exist. And metal became way more popular and accepted by media, and that's the important thing.
I get this question about Montreal all the time. I don't know the answer. Why are there so many good bands that come out of Poland? So many extreme, huge bands, Decapitated, Behemoth, yourselves. Why does the climate of Poland create such dark, evil music?
I think the roots are pretty much the same, anger and releasing, this, the screaming, growing and growling, and all these extremity was the way to escape from this bad realities, boring realities of Poland, back then, and all these bands that started actually in that, let's say, like 5 years, time, so had the same reasons, For us, that was escape, we felt like in brotherhood, we were looking different, we are feeling different, so we created this kind of world around us, the metal world, that made us feeling so much better, So the long hair, like leather jacket, spikes, the moshing and the peat, like in the shows, or on stage, if we're like just playing, that made us feeling so much better, that gave energy. That was the engine, and motivation for everything, We are still teenagers, guys, so that was something we really needed, just to spend energy, So actually it was really better to spend energy on stage or in the mosh pit than spend it in, like, in a restaurant beating other guys just like some other guys did, non-metal, So we are like opposite to that, and even if we are looking for like normal, let's say normal people, we are looking dangerous, we are not, actually we're on the opposite to that, but we felt better in that brotherhood, and metal was more than the music, definitely.
It's a positive outflow of all the negative energy.
Absolutely.
Vox&Hops is all about hanging out with metal brothers, talking about their lives, their music, and craft beer. Before we started, you said, I'm not the best guy for craft beer or beer in general.
Beer is also pretty much, present in Poland. But back then, I think vodka, like a strong liquor, and wine was typical for a company, So we actually supported this stronger alcohol, because so we connected that with the stronger music, But of course, beer, maybe because we did not have back then that good beer, like we have now, and since we started to, to live with vodka, with the liquor or wine, just if I say wine, try to imagine like the worst quality shit, something, we called wine, but that was not really wine you wanted to drink, but that was cheap and available, so that's why it was very, very popular, on the shows, on parties, and so on and so on. Or vodka, but vodka actually made us crazy pretty soon, and quick. So so after years, so we give up with that. So we turn into beer and wine, quality beer and quality wine, of course. And so probably in the new generation, they focus more on something which is like quality drinks, not the shit we had to drink, because that was the only available thing in the area.
If it wasn't for those shitty beers, though, it wouldn't have pushed people to go and try to make something better.
Actually, that's why when the real beer started to exist in Poland, so it immediately became very popular, and so people, that was very good, because the people turned from a vodka that made crazy, people too crazy sometimes, they turned into beer, which is like a good thing, It tastes good, and it did not melt your brain that fast,
Vodka is dangerous.
It is.
Effective and dangerous.
Yeah.
Do you remember that big beer company, that first good beer that came in? Do you remember what company was making that?
I remember that pretty good, because that was Löwenbräu. That was actually, I knew that after that this name came even from a time when Crusader, the German Crusaders were in the place where I live in, because this part I live in, it was the German part. It was called East Prussia. Löwenbräu actually came from that time, from 15th century. The name came from, and I remember that because immediately after this, the logo of this kind of shield with this Gothic letters, Löwenbräu, appeared, and they opened the bar, so that was just crowded all the time, and we couldn't believe that beer can be that tasty, and that good, and soon after that, of course, our local beer became at least that good, if not better. So I remember one of those old names that appear after the Poland change, after the Berlin Wall fall, and after the Iron Curtain just ceased to exist. There's one of those was called EB, like EB, the letters, and one of those first from the popular among metalheads and among just citizens of Holstein. So these two names, Löwenbräu and EB, these two names I remember really good, from those days, because that was very important. And the only names, back then.
Is there a craft beer scene happening in Poland now?
Yes, but I'm not a huge fan of that, so I can name you with a particular names or something. I'm just not following that. If I see, especially when we're touring, we asking for local quality beer just to know some special names of the area, the local beer. And sometimes I just give it a try, I try, I taste it, but I'm not just the one who should to discuss about that, I like to taste a beer, I like to drink a beer, but I'm not that huge fan just to keep the names in my head, just to feel that differences between them. I just like to taste it.
Take me back to you've toured for so many years with so many bands. If you could relive one tour because it was your favorite tour, something that happened that is dear to your heart, what tour would that be and what lineup would that be?
You know what? I like to tour, and especially I like to tour with good bands, like good friends. I don't really put attention on the style of the bands they play. I really motivated more by the personalities. And actually, I had a pleasure to tour with many good bands and many good friends. And I can't really remember the bad band, it's probably because we keep away from the bad guys and just crap bands in this meaning. And so I really don't name did just this particular tour. Of course, I might name the very first one because it was the first one. I could name the last one because the last one, but believe me, it happened. All those thousands of shows we played in the meantime were all enough important just to keep them as a very important. And I don't want to just specify any one of those because then the other ones could be like less important, and they were not. So let's stay with like all the shows, all the tours I like, all those I did, I respect, and I respect all those bands we get honored to play with.
Very beautiful answer. How about this new record? You mentioned that you love touring, you love playing. Do you put out new music because you also love making new music, or do you make music as a fuel to go out there and keep playing?
I really like to play them live. Stage is a place I love. But, if you play, you need the new songs to play. That's why I absolutely understand that we have to go to the studio and we have to enter the studio to record some new tunes. And this is actually why we do this. So definitely I do prefer to play live and to tour than to record, but I absolutely do understand the situation. To have new songs, we have to record them first, and that's why we do it. The same with the new album. It's maybe a little bit step back to the roots, to the times when we were racing with ourselves who play faster or just to play faster and more brutal, and Litany was, I think, a monumentum of that time. After this one, for the next 2 decades, I tried to mix more styles, and speed was not just priority, it was just one of the factors. And so since Revelation came up, so we can find the slower, even very slow songs in the Vader discography. I also gave some samples as background to the music, the samples we always use on stage as well. And after those 2 decades, so I felt that hunger to get back to the rough, speedy, sharp songs, short but deadly, and I think Solitude and Madness is a perfect, explanation of my hunger. And it was maybe more natural, not exactly like I'm talking now. It was not just, now we do the fast songs. It was just natural feel, natural need, I think, and but all in all, the album, after it was recorded, is like it is, and it's very, very aggressive, very brutal, and more like Litany was. It's just my personal, explanation, and that's why I compare this to the Litany. But of course, it's not like Litany. It's just the structure of the song is a little bit like, Litany was a combination of very short, rough and blasting songs, and many of such you can find on Solitude and Madness as well. This is most for those new generation of Vader fans that know Vader maybe since last decades. But for those who follow Vader since the very beginning, it's just more like a step back to the old days, when we're like when fast and brutal songs was nothing natural, which was pretty natural, and was nothing special, for Vader. It was just Vader, So for those, this is just Vader again,
Do you enjoy your time in the studio, though? Are you someone that enjoys tracking, or are you just relieved when it's over? No.
Of course, especially because after 15 years of working in head studios in Poland, so we finally decided it was about the time to change the atmosphere, to change the studio and producer. And we had some options, but finally we decided to travel to Grindstone Studio in England.
Wow.
To work with Scott Adkins. And one of the reasons was James, the drums is a core of every song and every band. And I wanted to keep him feeling good. And Scott Adkins and Grindstone Studio is not new for him. He was working in that one already with his band Divine Chaos, so I knew that he was free like fish in the water. So he could just focus just on feel. He was not stressed. He was just like I love to watch him just feeling like in his own place, in his own land, and that was very important as well, And for me, that was a chance, and I could work in a different way. Scott motivated me so much, and that was actually the first album when I focused that much on a vocal recording. So I never ever spent that much time in vocal recording, and usually that came easy to me. Usually I spend just an hour, 2 hours sometimes in just to record the songs I choose for that day and session. But this time we wanted to make it some special. I mean, I tried to change the vocal pitch to make it different. You can feel it when you listen the whole album, that this doesn't sound like in one style the whole song. I tried to find different pitch. I tried to find different voices, but still angry, still screaming or growling. And also I just used the opportunity that we are recording in England. We're an English producer, so it's definitely the album that sounded the best in English, if I can say so. So
your pronunciation, everything is on point.
So we were working on that pretty good, we focus on that as well, So not just how it sounds, and also how the words sound like, for the English guy, who was just listening to that. So that's the main differences, and if we can compare. And musically, of course, we read off that mud from the guitars. So on the album, you can feel the instruments more separated. You can feel the bass and guitars more separated, not like the block of sound like for the previous releases. That's why many fans already call this album, I don't know why, but they call it thrash more in the sound. It's probably because
really, okay.
It's probably because the sound is more bright and sharp in guitars, and also might sound a little bit more like old stylish, especially for those who know Vader from the last, let's say, 3 or 4 releases. But actually, that, in my opinion, that's good, because that's the new feel I was thinking about. This new sound I was thinking about, and we need it. So Scott Adkins and Grindstone Studio definitely gave the new spirit for the old Vader body, and that's my opinion. But I'm sure that the fans will have their own opinion about that, and just can't wait to hear it,
That's amazing. I did want to touch on James, having seen you play recently in Montreal, as we spoke about before. He's honestly one of the best metal drummers I've ever seen in my life. I couldn't take my eyes off of him. He hits so hard, every hit at that speed. It's just incredible. So you found another gem to be in your band.
He's a motivated drummer, definitely, and it's a pleasure to follow his progress in a band. When he joined Vader, he already was enough good, just to be able to play the Vader songs, and many of them are not easy for the drummer, trust me. And now he just progressed so much. He's so influenced by some different styles, but he's still. I was afraid first when we met, when we started to play together, that he will get a problem with the faster songs, with the blast beats, and he did, but just first, and then he progressed so much, so he created his own blasting style in Vader, and you can feel it, and that strong beat, strong heat, and Actually, this is something which reminds me the Doc's play. Like when Doc was so strong drummer when he was playing and composing in Vader and drumming in Vader. And James, right after he joined Vader, so he was in that style, strong beating, strong hitting, and he just progressed that style, and that's good.
You have such an iconic voice. A lot of people are influenced by your voice. It's interesting that even after all these years, you still want to take it somewhere different on this new record. I find that refreshing. And
I started to think about this, modifying my vocal around like a couple of albums before. But as I mentioned before, I never focused that much on vocal recordings like on this album. And I definitely gonna just walk that way in the future. And probably I never, I started to sing to scream in Vader actually because I couldn't find a singer. Mm-hmm. And after, a couple of albums recorded and as a singer as well, I just started to like it and just, I became a singer, but first, vocal was something additional to the guitar to me, and I needed years just to like that, that part of job on stage. And today it's really hard to imagine myself playing just guitar without singing. I just feel bad when maybe for playing it's better, but in general, being on stage without that, voice, without, this emotional screaming, without that kind of express myself. So I started to love my vocal and I started to love myself as a singer as well. I just needed time for that.
It's become a part of your identity on stage.
It is, definitely. Now it is. But as I said, firstly, it was just something I had to do. I didn't really like that much. But after years, myself, and first of all, fans, they found it like a part of Vader, like a permanent part of Vader. So that's be it.
Peter, thank you so much for coming on to Vox and Hops, having a chat with me, talking about your life, some music, and some beer.
Thank you, dude. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you and say hi to the rest of the Cryptops friends. And it's a pleasure to have a chance to chat. So stay healthy, stay safe, and see you soon as possible on stage.
Yes, please. Let's together. Yes. Cheers, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. So much fun hanging out with Peter. As I mentioned during this chat, my first tour was alongside him, and he has always been just super nice to me. So massive shout-outs to all extreme metal artists for being down-to-earth and super fucking cool. I love that. I know that. And I'd like to share that with all of you. So massive shout-out to Peter. Everyone, when you finish listening to this, head on over, listen to Solitude and Madness, the brand new Vader record, which came out today via Nuclear Blast. It is absolutely incredible. It is unrelenting. It is exactly what Vader should be. So check it out. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope you get the chance to relax a little bit. That's what I am looking forward to doing. I'll be back next week with 3 episodes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox and Hopsheads.